So welcome to what I would argue is actually a pretty substantially decent budget starter version of the Vengeance Paladin in Season 5. Based off the testing that I had done, the gear that we tried out, and a lot of suggestions from chat, I picked a set of gear that I think represents things you should be able to reasonably get your hands on at the start of a ladder season, especially on single player. People are asking about a couple different item choices, and I figure, you know what, let's take being able to trade out of the equation at all. And I think the most expensive piece of gear is maybe the in this crescent moon. We rolled a single crescent moon. Then the rest of the gear is all things that, again, you can just pick up yourself. There's no slams, there's no sockets, using basic runes, and all the rest of the gear can be farmed in normal and nightmare. So let's get into a budget Vengeance Paladin. Let's look at the gear that we have. I also want to very quickly explain the charms that we have, because they're really just representative of charms that I think that you should have at this point, especially since this character farms Nightmare Cows starting very early and very well, even on worse gear, considering you have very high level Conviction Aura as a synergy. And the Grand Charms are literally just life and res, so this would be any combination of high resistances and high life, or all res charms that you might have on hand at this point. And then we were focusing on lightning damage. Crescent Moon just has too many good stats on it to really go with any of the other options like Baron or Star, Gimmer Shred, even a lightsaber, anything like that, because of a few key points. One, it has ignore target defense, which is really important for landing the first blow so that the explosion has a chance to catapult off and hit multiple targets. On top of that, the minus enemy light res means that for right now on the starter version, we're going to be focusing on the lightning damage aspect of Vengeance. For the helmet, lore plus to skills is really important on this build, as well as just being able to put this together, starting in normal cows and even Nightmare Countess. It's just a really solid gear piece. Twitch throw, unslammed, unsocketed, increased chance of blocking, strength and dex to help wear our gear, and then that increased attack speed is going a really long way to make sure that we're at the fastest frame possible. We're using 2-piece Angelics for the AR. The plus to life is nice, and the plus to dex is nice as well. We're using Tiamat's Rebuke here. Now you can also use Sankeker's Fall, just about anything else. The nice part about Tiamat's Rebuke is it does give you a couple of defensive options like Nova and Frost Nova when struck, which will put things into hit recovery. The Hydra damage is kind of Keck W, doesn't really matter, but it comes along with all res. Being able to put a perfect diamond into this as well would go a long way to make it so that you don't need any of the charms like these with all res on them. We went with 2-piece death set here because we're looking for that cannot be frozen, as well as the all res and the 30 IAS. Any 20 IAS gloves and decent belt would work here. We didn't even upgrade the death set because you kind of don't need potions on this build. The other ring is just a random rare ring that we're using. Arguably one of the rarer pieces of gear that we have, Inferno Stride. We literally have nothing on swap. I would use a teleport staff here if I was solo play. And then the rest of the small charms that we're using are flat elemental damage. I'm trying to go for all lightning damage here, but I thought that an entire inventory worth of perfect elemental charms was definitely going a bit too far. So what I did was I completely filled my inventory, and then I kept taking small charms out until I no longer felt like I was really losing that much kill speed. And even with just a handful of 10 to 15 random elemental damage charms on the build, much better if you could get lightning damage charms here, we were still 1 to 3 shotting Hell Cow packs, and in Nightmare, the kill speed was almost imperceptible. So somewhere around 10 to 15 charms seems to be the magic place, where if you have similar gear on, you're going to be getting a decent clear speed, at least on players 1 difficulty. The best part about the Mercenary is that we're just using a Cold Merc. The Prayer Aura helps to keep him alive since he doesn't really have any other methods of doing so, and gives us a little bit of additional health regen, so we're not as reliant on potions. And then I literally just put a shaft stop on him, and he's spinning around, spitting out blizzards, which do a really good amount of damage, even with no plus skills, considering we're running a max level Conviction Aura. For our skill points here, we want to be maxing out Vengeance, obviously, as our primary damage source. We're going to be checking on Holy Shock and Conviction Aura from the offensive tree as our 2 synergies, while putting dump points down into Holy Fire. A couple options that you have is making sure to pick up at least 1 point Blessed Aim for the passive here, and then picking up at least 1 point Cleansing Aura, 2 point Meditation Aura, and then 2 points into Defiance for those passives as well. I recommend Vigor Aura for the mobility and the utility of being able to run around town faster. And then obviously you want to get down to Charge, Holy Shield, and I would recommend picking up 1-point Joust, again for additional mobility and that pseudo teleport before you have something like an Enigma. For our stats, we have enough strength and enough dex to wear our gear, as well as hit the 75% chance to block when you're using Holy Shield. And then every other stat point is going to go into vitality. You really don't need points into energy. You're able to manage that with your mana per kill, as well as potions. And lastly, I would just say, because there are so many different options on the build, especially on the budget version, most items that you find are going to be incredibly impactful. And the build is going to work very similarly, regardless of which weapon, shield, or additional pieces that you end up putting on, including whichever type of element that you put onto your charms. But if you do end up focusing any one element, just be smart and make sure to be farming in areas where either you know you can break the resistances or they don't typically come immune to the primary damage type that you have. Obviously, cows isn't the only place to farm, but I would super recommend farming nightmare cows early on. Your power scale there goes through the roof very early on, and since it's on players 5, you're going to be able to pick up a lot of charms, and all of those charms can have the stats that you need to help you scale into the end game on Vengeance. While I don't think that's the fastest build or even necessarily the flashiest build, although that seems a little counterintuitive, the ability to manage all of your resistances, as well as having something like a lower res wand on swap, if you're really interested in increasing your clear speed against bosses, means that the Vengeance is kind of an all-in-one farmer. Just make sure to max out that block chance, because it's very difficult, especially in the early game, to get enough survivability on the build from leech and damage mitigation when you would have to sacrifice so many of the other good stats that the lower budget options can bring you. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that exploring the budget and starter version is a lot more helpful, because just about any build is absolutely going to smash content, even in maps and in later hell game difficulty. If you put godly gear on it, I hope that this went a longer way to show you what's possible, especially when you first walk into the ladder or you're playing single player. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.